What is up, everybody? I should probably move the microphone closer to my face. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-party, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. I'm your host, J Cal, and I'm here every Tuesday to talk to you, the NWA fam, about, well, the NWA. I make myself laugh too much. I should be more professional about things, but I'm not. This is the pre-party again. My name is J Cal. We're here to talk NWA, NWA Power, NWA 74th anniversary show, NWA USA, and of course tonight's episode of NWA Power, which will be predominantly featuring matches from the women called NWA EMPOWERRR. And I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys are here to join. I see Willie is in the house. The great Hisa is in the house. By the way, the great Hisa does not get nearly the credit he deserves for coming up with the wrestling title histories. And I'm going to write it down because I can never remember it. I always have to look it up online. But I'm going to put a link here in the chat because honestly, the wrestling-titles.com, which is right here, wrestling-titles.com, is such a great site. It's so informative. It's very helpful. His site is kind of what helped me decide to launch the Alliance-Wrestling.com because of his dedication to the National Wrestling Alliance all those years, especially the dark eras when a lot of people weren't talking about the NWA. It was Hisa and myself and maybe like two other people, and that was about it. We had a very active message board, sure, but it wasn't quite the coverage that the NWA gets today. So make sure you visit wrestling-titles.com, the great Hisa's pro wrestling title website. Tons of NWA news and information there. Especially you can go back and look at all the title defenses by year, going all the way back to 1948 and even beyond, really. So again, welcome to the pre-party. Dave Scooby's in the house. Welcome, Dave. I see more people are filtering in, so I'm just kind of stalling a little bit. But make sure you do check out wrestling-titles.com again. He's been a great friend to this site, to this podcast since the very beginning. So we try to plug what they're doing as well. If you also want to check out some more of my friends who do a lot of this cool stuff called documenting wrestling history, you might want to check out Pro Wrestling Zone podcast, the PWZ podcast with Rick Del Santo, good friend of mine. A lot of great wrestling content. I'm not sure if he's still doing the NWA episodes anymore, but he was covering NWA from the Northeast perspective with some of the talents that were part of that scene. So check out what he's doing. Of course, you guys, I think you all know this, but Gary Horn and I, we're buddies. Some of you may not know that. So I actually had somebody think that Gary and I didn't like each other. That's completely BS. I think Gary's great. I love Gary. Gary is one of the guys that I feel does a great job of representing not only the NWA family, but as now he's actually part of the NWA. So I want to give him his flowers too. Check out This Is Pro Wrestling, their podcast. It's also on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, do so. Tons of great NWA content, and they're basically the authorized version of the NWA podcast. So make sure you check that out, and I think it's pretty awesome. Hisa says, thanks for the plug. Yes, I've never stopped following the NWA since the early 80s. Maybe I need to get a life. Hisa, don't say such hurtful things, my friend. You're doing the Lord's work. Look, if it wasn't for somebody like you, much of the history of the NWA would have been forgotten. It's sites like yours, and I'm going to throw myself in there too. Sites like mine that help keep that NWA name relevant. You know, we hear Billy Corgan say such things like, the NWA hasn't had this much steam in 30 years, and I quickly look back to the time that the NWA and TNA were affiliated and thought, that doesn't sound right to me. I also think back to the times when Dave Marquez was running smaller arenas all throughout the Southwest, the Sun Belt, if you will, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Florida, all those states in between, and they were doing small to medium-sized arenas with tons of shows. That was like in 2007, I think 2008. It's just a fun, kind of silly thing. Hey, Jeff Meacham's in the house. Another guy. If you guys are in a wrestling podcast, Jeff Meacham's been doing this for. He's probably the first guy I knew that was doing YouTube podcasts. I go back to 2008 doing Blog Talk Radio, but Jeff is one of the first guys I saw on YouTube doing his, honing his craft, talking wrestling, talking, other, what is it, pop culture references and stuff. Make sure you check him out too if you want just to see what's going on in the world of pro wrestling and beyond. So that's all the plugs I'm doing for now. Who knows? Maybe I'll do some more later. Bobby Petito says Pollo Lamar and Thrillbilly Silas got to interview yesterday on This Is Pro Wrestling. Yeah. I did see Pollo on. I didn't get a chance to watch it yet. My weeks are kind of jam packed if it's not work, family. It's preparing for the podcast, and I don't always have time to check out what they're doing at This Is Pro Wrestling, but I highly recommend it. I jump in the chat from time to time. Jeremy's on there too. Wrestling with MMA is on there as well. Of course, we're growing here on this station. If you guys have been subscribed for a while, we've always had the pre-party. That's been a hallmark of this YouTube channel since about 2019. And we've been doing the Alliance Guys podcast since 2008. So we've been around for a while ourselves. But we just added a third program to our weekly offerings, and that's the other Alliance Guys. I think this will be episode 5 coming out this Wednesday. Make sure you tune into that. You'll hear a different perspective, different voices. Dave Scooby, Jeremy, who you guys know is wrestling with the MMA, and of course, Tim, NWA Gold, the guy that likes to give away a lot of cool stuff. They'll be doing their podcast again Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I might even jump on. You never know what you're going to get with those other Alliance Guys. And, of course, we're looking to do more interviews down the road, too. If you guys have somebody in mind that you'd like me to interview or somebody who you think should be interviewed, shoot me a DM. Let me know. I'd love to talk to really anyone about wrestling, but specifically the NWA or even, Southern California wrestling stuff. I have some connections. Not a lot, but some. Let's talk about what happened last week. I'm not going to go for a full recap and review of what happened, but man, the internet wrestling world got tossed on its head. We were talking just about how wild it was for, Billy Corgan to come out there and strip Nick Aldis of his number one contendership, strip him of his opportunity to cash in for that 10 pounds of gold, strip him of the opportunity to wrestle for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship at the 74th anniversary show. Just ripped it right out of his hands and gave it to Tyrus. Of all people, he gave it to Tyrus, the television champion. It wasn't even an earned victory. And I mean, there's plenty of guys on the roster who would have made sense. Tyrus is one of them. Sure, Jack Stain is another. If you look at the guys who recently have challenged for that title, of course, the Pope, or Brian Meyer, or Tom Latimer, or even Mike Knox, who has a shot. Mike Knox still has a guarantee, that Cardona contract, right? Where when Matt Cardona officially relinquished the title, he forfeited the championship on the conditions that they would benefit the family Cardona, right? So VSK got his shot at the World Junior Heavyweight Championship. Tonight, Chelsea Green cashes in on her contract with the Cardonas. She gets a women's world title shot against Camille. And then Mike Knox is supposed to have a shot. I'm not specifically sure what Brian Myers was promised. I mean, this was kind of happened before he was a regular for the NWA, so maybe nothing. Or maybe he has a shot at a title at some point. But let's just throw it out there. Either one of those guys in theory, should have a shot at the World's Heavyweight Championship. So to give it to Tyrus is a little bit unsettling. But again, Tyrus is just one victory away from being able to cash in the best of 7. So any way you look at it, I mean, Tyrus could have been in that position one way or the other. So it looks like there's a lot of things that are happening within the NWA, and it was getting a ton of attention. I mean, Billy Corgan literally went on Busted Open Radio, one of the number one sports shows on Sirius XM satellite radio, and basically told off Nick Aldis, not to his face, however, but to hundreds of thousands of listeners all across the country, and basically said that this isn't how we're going to do business any going further. Oddly enough, Aldis is still supposed to be on the card. Aldis has kind of been mostly quiet. He's been promoting other events that he's going to be a part of, but has basically not really gotten too much into any of this. And, as this thing keeps progressing, I thought this would be, dominating the news cycle. But then Friday, Vince McMahon retires from the World Wrestling Entertainment, retires. And then on Monday, they announced Triple H as the head of talent relations and as head of creative for the WWE. It's just wild how quickly things flipped around and how fast everything has happened. And, think about this. Matt Cardona relinquishing the title was like about a month ago, but we're not even thinking about that anymore. And it was just such a short time, but look how much has already happened since then. It's been pretty crazy. Let's go to some of the comments. I think you guys have been chit-chatting in here, and I'd like to see what you guys are saying. Meacham says, 20 years strong on the no DQ front, 3 years on his own. We'll be doing a full live watch-along for both nights of the 74th, for what it's worth. Would love you along for that ride. Unfortunately, I won't be able to participate in that. I won't be able to watch live. Wife is out of town that weekend, so I'll be hanging out with the kiddos while the pay-per-view's on. Jeff goes, crazy how long we've both been doing this, how much the NWA has increased in visibility, but you and I both know that it never really went away. I know all too well it's been 10 years since the 7 levels. Yeah, I mean, Jeff, look, that was a very big time for the NWA, the transition between, pro wrestling organization and then the International Wrestling Corporation, that's basically the definitive Bruce Tharp and the I don't want to say Dave Marquez era, but basically the Dave Marquez era. And that was the big jump, from Pro Wrestling Organization to International Wrestling Corporation. And that all kind of accumulated right around the same time as that best of 7 series between Colt and Adam was happening, thus negating the end results and really making a mockery of everything. And there are receipts, man, and I've seen some of them. And although this is all old news, it was so backwards how the Tharp era of the NWA looked at all of it. And I think if they would have been smart and more proactive, they could have really benefited from that relationship. I'm glad that popped for the plug. You guys are doing a hell of a job. Jeremy, Scooby, Tim. I know Tim's not in here. If you guys haven't checked out that podcast, it's fun. It's a fun, quick. I think it's supposed to be an hour, but tends to go a little late because, well, kind of like the Alliance guys, everyone on there has an opinion, and it's fun to listen to different perspectives. Sometimes Tim and I think exactly alike. Sometimes we're polar opposites, and Jeremy and Scooby have a lot to say too. It's fun. It's a fun hour to hour and 15 minutes of a podcast, and I can't recommend it enough. Willie says, please interview Genocide or Allison K. I would love to interview either one of them. Genocide, I think, is, again, I've said this many times, probably the most polished pro wrestler in the NWA at this point. I don't know why they're dragging her feet on pulling the trigger on that one. If the rumors of the TV title are true, she'd be my choice. Absolutely. Jeff says, yeah, there's more to this than just Billy and Nick beefing. Curious if the politics of the infrastructure will allow us more info at the top of the hour. So here's my thing, guys. Last week, before I heard Billy, before I heard any of it, I was thinking, holy crap, this is a shoot. This is 100% real. Nick is done. Nick is walking away from the NWA. And then I heard Billy on Busted Open. And now I think I'm leaning more towards a shoot. Now, to be honest, I don't know. I'm not in those boardrooms, right? I don't have an ear to the ground. I don't have a fly on the wall. My connection to the NWA is not what it used to be. However, I think this is a work, but if they're not careful, could turn into a shoot real easy. So we'll see. Dave Scooby said, wouldn't mind seeing Knox and Dane doing big boy stuff. I mean, let's face it, right? Knox is probably the only guy on the roster as big as Jax. And I mean, like height-wise, weight-wise, I think in terms of sheer power, I don't think anybody is really 100% there with Jax. I mean, I know that Tom Latimer is a big dude. I know Nick Aldis is a big dude, but Jax Dane is just built different. I mean, he's a farm boy, and I don't use that as an insult at all. That guy is corn fed. He's a big dude. He's the right guy to be national champion too. Can't wait to see what's next for Jax Dane. That's cool, Chris, Jeff, Chris. He says we still have one whole month till the 74th. I hope there will be more twists with the heavyweight title match. I mean, that's the thing, right? We don't have any idea what's going to happen. And Gary Horn will say this, and it drives me nuts. He says, well, you guys are talking about the story, and it's not even finished yet. Well, yeah, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like, we critique it. We don't know where this is going. And between now and then, I mean, look, there's the Gathering event that is not technically an NWA show, but is featuring a ton of NWA talent. One of the matches on the card, Tom Latimer versus Nick Aldis. Maybe that is for the second night, the opportunity to face the winner of Trevor versus Tyrus. But we really don't know. There's nothing that's been out there to explain any of it. Meacham says, yes, I've accredited everyone involved with this championship wrestling from Hollywood era of the NWA for allowing me to see the 10 pounds of gold so frequently. I hope part of Corgan's 20-year plan includes some trips to SoCal. Jeff, you and I are both from this area. I mean, you're closer to Los Angeles than I am, but I just don't feel like SoCal's a good fit for the NWA. I mean, I've seen the struggles that even championship wrestling from Hollywood that featured that 10 pounds of gold, it struggled to get the crowds to care about the NWA. And for crying out loud, we had Colt Cabana and Adam Pearce, and even for a brief time, Blue Demon Jr. as world's heavyweight champion. And it was hard. It was a hard sell. And when Nick Aldis came out here, yes, the fans in Ocean View Pavilion out in Port Hueneme, they cared, but they were conditioned to care. And I think if Billy Corgan were to come to the end of, come bring the NWA to Southern California right now, he'd be starting from scratch. I don't see very many promotions out here choosing to partner with the NWA. Now, I could be mistaken. I mean, look, there's a lot of great wrestling promotions out here that could benefit from a guy like Trevor Murdoch, or benefit from Jax Dane, or benefit from Homicide, right? I just don't see it happening, at least not right now. Maybe later. Bobby's asking, who would you like to see wrestle in the junior heavyweight division? Well, I kind of heard about this guy who's just seemingly asked for his release, named Jonathan Gresham. I think he's available. I don't know for sure what's happening with Gresh. You guys all heard famously that Claudio Castagnoli defeated Gresham this weekend at Death Before Dishonor to become the new Ring of Honor World Champion. And that was the opening match to the pay-per-view. That's usually a bad sign. That's usually not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. So for them to drop that title like that, change it so quickly, I don't think Gresham will be back in Ring of Honor. And then you've heard about how afterwards him and Tony Khan got into it. There was some issues with communication, depending on what dirt sheets you're reading or what's being reported by reputable sites like PW Insider or Fightful. It's just very up in the air. And I mean, if it's a work, it's a great work. Gresham even deleted his social media accounts, but he's a guy that I think would be immensely entertaining to watch in a ring with somebody like Homicide. Also, personally, I would love to see B-Boy, another SoCal great, a legendary luminary B-boy take on Homicide. They've had some great matches, usually on the same side of the ring, but sometimes against each other. I think they'd be a lot of fun to watch wrestle as well. Here it is, guys. Tyrus has to give up his buffet and TV titles if he wins the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think Tyrus has given up any buffets, man. He likes his buffets. And Hisa says, I was only joking about the women's TV title here last week, but we are really getting it. There's speculation. I don't like, nothing has officially been reported. And again, a lot of dirt sheets. Maybe they came here and heard you say, Hisa, and knowing your wealth of knowledge from the NWA, maybe they just ran with it. But the idea is that there's going to be an additional second tier title for the women's division, which I'm not exactly a fan of. I don't think that the roster can really stomach to have all these titles. It's beginning to feel like everyone's going to have a championship. And I think Tim said it last week. If everyone has a title, then really none of the titles are important. And I don't disagree with that. Willie says, Bobby, I would love to see Laredo Kid in the junior heavyweight division. Laredo Kid would be good. I also forgot about Barrett Brown, 50 caliber. I mean, he was a former junior heavyweight champion, never lost the title. And if we're going to get real fantasy booking, gosh, I really think Danny Limelight would be a great junior heavyweight champion. I just know that for some reason, it just doesn't seem like he and the NWA are meant to be. In fact, I don't think they're caring for any of the bodega. I mean, they had Slice Boogie. It would have been hard to bring in Danny or Papo Esco, but I just don't see that happening. The mayor says Aldis needs the NWA far more than the Alliance needs him. Dude has one speed and dimension only. Whoa. What would be different or better with him on top again? We're going to start calling you for real because you're speaking the truth. I like Aldis. Right, like he's not my biggest supporter. I don't think he'll be wearing the Alliance blog T-shirts I sent him years ago anytime soon. But you're not wrong, right? Like, what did he do? What could he do differently now as champion that he didn't already do in his first reign? How could he top the first reign? Second reign would be easy. He just actually have to defend the title. But the first reign, when he's going to the United Kingdom for 10 matches, to defend the title in Australia for 4 matches, to defend the title in China 1 match, defend the title all across the United States and Canada. I mean, these things are very immeasurable, and it was only like 8 months that he did all that, right? He won the title at the he won that title at CZW, right? He won the title. He defeated Tim Storm. He took the rest of December off. It was December 9th, 2017. 2018 kicks out. What's he do? He goes to the UK, defends the title, comes back to Hollywood, defends the title, goes to China, defends the title, goes to Australia, defends the title, doing all this crazy stuff. And then more or less was the main event for All In, right? I mean, like, people will say, no, that wasn't the main event, but really it was Cody versus Nick, which was what most of the people were talking about. That 10 pounds of gold was what most people were talking about. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I know a lot of people disagree. I'm not one of them. Meacham says definitely a harder road to traverse after whatever went down that led to Dave not working with them anymore, but a man can dream. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying it's impossible, right? When Dave stopped promoting the NWA back in 2012, when we were talking about International Wrestling Corporation winning the lawsuit against Pro Wrestling Organization and inheriting all of the assets of the NWA, there were still promotions like Vendetta Pro who were working with the NWA at that time. So yeah, it's not impossible. It's just, like you said, a harder road to traverse. Mayor says Gresham was unprofessional, didn't wear the mask, and had job face. Yeah. I mean, yes. I don't know if they told him not to wear the mask, though. I don't know what direction he was given before he went out there. From what I saw, it looked like he was putting his heart and soul into the match, regardless of the outcome. Sorry about that. But, yeah, he did look like he had a little bit of the boo-boo face going. Chris Drummond says AEW has world title start shows before FTR versus Briscoes was always going to main event. Nothing wrong with that, right? Look, I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that. it was just surprising to me that that's the match you would lead the show off with. And of course, it's a great way to lead off the show because it was a great match. It got people hooked in. If you know, but under that same set of circumstances, you wouldn't put it on the pre-show, would you? You wouldn't have given that match away for free. Why would it be the opening match? That's just where I'm confused at. Chris says, so there's a possibility of us getting Camille versus Taya. I mean, look, you could have been watching XPW for the last month. You'd have had it at least twice. Meacham says, Aldis is not wrong when he says he was the spearhead to bringing the NWA back to the prominence in that first reign. But the fact that the 1,000-day second reign went down in the pandemic. So, yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, look, man, I am not the biggest. Again, I very much appreciate the athlete, the wrestler, Nick Aldis. I don't really appreciate the personality of Nick Aldis. And, you know, I mean, every time he says something like that, I think, wow, so what Pierce did as champion is meaningless. What Cabana did, what you know, Rob Conway defending the title in Japan. Like, let's not forget, Rob Conway defended that title at Wrestle Kingdom. Wrestle freaking Kingdom. Nick Aldis hasn't even sniffed New Japan Pro Wrestling. Rob Conway was defending that title on the regular at Wrestle Kingdom. In fact, we had two champions from New Japan during that time. In fact, one of the champions from New Japan Pro Wrestling put over Jack Stane. So, yeah, sure. Okay, Nick, heard you loud and clear. You did a lot for the NWA, and you did. You certainly did. But let's not, like, trivialize what everyone did before you. And when you, like, cut him off at the knees saying they didn't do anything. I mean, Sting winning that World's Heavyweight Championship in an Impact ring, AJ Styles being the dominant champion he was, that title being defended in Scotland at the WWA pay-per-views when Jeff Jarrett unified it with World Wrestling All-Stars. I mean, these things were big deals. I don't know why you would shoot yourself in the arm and try to say, like, oh, nothing happened. It was Ric Flair and then it was Nick Aldis. No. F that and F you. There's so much stuff that happened in between that. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Thanks, Jeremy. I missed it. Meacham says impossible versus improbable is very much the reality. So thank goodness for fights, all access, and shows like yours. Hey, thanks, Jeff. I do appreciate that. Bobby says Caprice Coleman wrestled on the NWA USA last Saturday against Joe Alonzo. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Caprice because now that Ring of Honor's back, I don't know what his contract with Ring of Honor is going to be. I don't know if he's actually a full-time employee or if he's, if he's just an on-air talent for him. And if he's just an on-air talent for him, I don't see why there'd be any kind of conflict with him wrestling for the NWA. But that all remains to be seen. We don't know. Willie says, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, was it affiliate of the NWA? No, absolutely not. PWG has had zero to do with the NWA. In fact, PWG would probably consider themselves the antithesis of the NWA. They have nothing in common. The only thing that they have in common is that Adam Pearce at one point held the world title for them. That's really it. I mean, I guess Joey Ryan was a tag team champion in PWG and held the tag titles in the NWA. They used some of the same talent because of Southern California, but ultimately they had nothing to do with each other. And that's, really based on the promoters for PWG not really wanting to be a part of the NWA, not really wanting anything to do with David Marquez. So, yeah. Thanks, Issa. Do appreciate you, brother. Jeff says the personality of Nick Aldis has me blocked on Twitter for reasons unknown to this day. Shrug. I know why he blocked me. He messaged me before he did it. Anyways, join the crowd. You're one of many. Even Kyle Davis is now blocked, so there's that. The mayor says the net says he cursed out TK beforehand, so it might have been F my job face. I've had that many times too. Why else wouldn't he wear it for a major pay-per-view when he wore it on Impact and AEW Dark? Yeah, I mean, I agree, Mayor, and that's a whole circle I'm not even familiar with. Ring of Honor is I'm excited to see what TK is going to do with ROH, but at the same time, at the expense of Jonathan Gresham, I wish they could have done something better, something different. maybe not lose the first time he defends it under the AEW ownership, and maybe actually have a series of matches with somebody like Claudio or Brian Danielson, excuse me, or something of that nature. But for him just to go out there on the first night and the first match of the pay per view and say, hasta la vista, I just am not a big fan of that, especially how he carried that company post pandemic, right? Like during the pandemic, he really carried that title and wore it proudly and took it everywhere. And when Ring of Honor was on hiatus, he was the guy still out there defending the title, making it meaningful, right? Keeping it in the mind and thoughts and hearts of all pro wrestling fans out there who were watching, and then only to come in and lose to Claudio. Now, again, Claudio Castagnoli is one of my favorite pro wrestlers, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for him and would love to see a long, lengthy ROH world title reign for him that hopefully spills into AEW and gets him opportunities there as well. However, I feel like that's not the right way to do it, and Gresham deserved a lot more. Now, if he went out there and cussed out TK, well, it is what it is. But I just feel like that was an unfortunate series of events. Dodie brings up the point that Nick was a former IWGP Tag Team Champion, and I cannot take that away from him. You are correct. He also, I believe, held tag titles with Samoa Joe of the GHC for Pro Wrestling Noah, right? The Global Honored Crown tag titles. However, there's a big difference between defending those titles in Impact and defending those titles in New Japan. And of course, it wasn't Wrestle Kingdom. At least I don't think it was. I could be wrong. Hype Picasso says, is it true Steamboat going to be in the NWA? I believe Steamboat, as well as Barry Windham, will be a part of the 74th anniversary show as part of the meet and greet. I have Steamboat on my replica, but Windham is the one I am missing, and it really steams me that I won't be there. But I'm excited for him. Chris Drummond says, let's be honest, all this is only known as the guy Cody beat. Ooh, that stings, man. I don't see him that way. And I'm biased. I'm an NWA guy, right? Like Jay Cal's the NWA guy. He did so much before he lost to Cody. I can't just saddle him with that title. And then Chris says, then when Cody left, no one cared anymore except diehard fans. That I also disagree with. I was there at the 70th anniversary show, and yes, I do feel like there was a huge new fan base there based on Cody being there, but I also feel like a lot of those fans stuck around, and I get heat for saying this, but I think the entire This Is Pro Wrestling podcast and the followership that group has is based on the fact that a lot of those fans were fans of All Elite Wrestling or the Cody and the Young Bucks storyline from Ring of Honor. And I feel like they built that audience based on what happened at All In. There's nothing wrong with that. Please don't take me the wrong way, but I think they can help convert a lot of those would-be AEW fans to the NWA. Willie Bowen says Christian Cage, Rhino also won the World's Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of guys. Raven, Cage, we mentioned Jarrett, Ron Killings, Ken Shamrock. There was a lot of great talent to hold that 10 pounds of gold. But, if you're talking about the guys who did the most with that belt, I think you have to give Jarrett, Styles, and Sting were like the class of that era. And Cage and Christian Cage, I will say him too, really did a lot to carry that title and make it meaningful during their reigns as champion. Abyss held the title as well. Again, a lot of the guys did a lot for that title. But I don't know. I feel like AJ Styles was the MVP of the company when he held the title. It was a big deal. I would see him defend that title in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. He defended that title in Ring of Honor. He defended that title in Combat Zone Wrestling, thus really proving the point that he was a world champion. Christian Cage brought a lot of credibility to that title because he was hot off of a WWE run. And, he could have been back in WWE and competing for their ECW championship or the IC title or the US title, or been always a contender for the world championship, but he chose to go to Impact. And then when he became NWA world champion, it was very meaningful. Kurt Angle would have been one of those guys too. Unfortunately, the NWA ended its relationship with Impact before that happened. So, Jeff, you bring up the bitterness between the old grudges between Aldis and Corgan when it comes to TNA and Impact and the way both men were handled there. And you're right. You're not wrong there. I'm sure there's some of that, but remember, these guys gainfully did business with each other for 4 years, and the NWA as it is now does not exist without both Billy Corgan and Nick Aldis, and I think they're both very aware of that. And I've heard both in private and in public Nick Aldis say things to the line of, "Well, that's maybe not how I would book this match, but it's not my company, it's Billy's." And he knows that Billy is the guy who stirs the drink, but he also knows his value too. It's one of those situations where I know that deep down, both of them know they need each other. Because, I mean, would we still be here if that was Eli Drake instead of Nick Aldis? Does Eli Drake make it to the UK for 10 title defenses in the first year? Does Eli Drake get on the House of Hardcore card and end up in Australia? Now, I know Eli Drake certainly would have ended up in China. That was a Dave Marquez booking, and he would have loved to have Eli Drake in China. But the other matches, I think, are all based on Aldis and his popularity, as well as the way he does business. I mean, I think you'll hear, if you listen to Busted Open Radio, you'll hear Tommy Dreamer put over Aldis all the time about his professionalism. And I mean, that's why he put him on his cards. Pure and simple. That's why he was on the cards. Dodie says, diehard fans who are big enough to keep the NWA afloat to this day. I mean, absolutely, man. This most of the people in this chat right now, you guys have been watching the NWA for more than just the last 5 years. A lot of you guys have been watching that NWA going back to, like we said, the Pro Wrestling Organization or the International Wrestling Corporation. But some of you even go back even further. Like the Hisa said, he's been covering it since the 80s. Bro, I was watching in 86. I love the 10 pounds of gold, but I thought that was an AWA title because all my Remco figures came with it. Wrestling with MMA says, and yet I'm still unblocked by Aldis, which is crazy because you're not a big Aldis fan either. That's for Jeremy Wrestling with the MMA. Jeff goes on to say, you have to remember. Oh, we already talked about that. Bobby Bachito says, I'd like to see Darius Lockhart wrestle again in the NWA. Yeah, man. Darius Lockhart was a guy that looked really good and I thought had a ton of potential. I'm not sure where he fell off. Pipe Picasso says, if I win the Mega Million, I'll buy the NWA. You know what we should be talking about right now is that the guy who's the head of talent relations and the guy who's head of creative, who grew up an NWA fanboy, might have the means to buy the NWA. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I'm sure as hell not manifesting this shit. But what would happen if Triple H decided, hey, you know what would make NXT better? If we changed the name to NWA. Think about that for just a minute. Just a minute. Who loves the NWA more than Triple H? I mean, the rumor is that he's the one that bought the title from High Spots, Ric Flair's original 10 pounds of gold championship belt. And supposedly that title hangs above his office door in Titan Towers in Connecticut. So, I mean, look, there's a possibility. I'm not holding my breath for anything. Billy Corgan has to want to sell. But honestly, if it's causing him so much stress that he's ripping out number one contenders from their title spot, maybe he's interested in selling, and maybe the WWE comes in with the right number that makes him want to sell. Who knows? It makes my heart happy when Pollo shows up in this podcast, mostly because I respect the hell out of Pollo Namar. She's got a brain for the business, so knowledgeable. And when she comes in here, what I feel like she's telling me is, I respect you, J. Cal. And you know what, Pollo? I respect you. And Pollo points out that Steamboat will be at day one of the NWA TV tapings in Nashville. And then Dodie corrected me. Yeah, Steamboat will be at Power. Wyndham will be at the Chase. Pollo says Chris dislikes the NWA. Chris kind of does. Chris doesn't dislike the NWA. He just wants it to be his way. He wants Matt Cardona to be back as champion. He wants to see Nick Aldis take a breather. And I think a lot of us feel that way. I really do. Pollo says all of those early TNA championships were technically the NWA World Championship as a result of that partnership. Pollo, that's what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about. I feel it's really disrespectful when Nick Aldis cuts off what the NWA was prior to him joining. Same thing with Billy Corgan. Both of them are guilty of saying how much they've done for the NWA, but like really trivialize all the work that happened before them. And I'm talking, there was a very prominent area when Impact was running as the NWA affiliate, NWA associate, whatever you want to call them. They licensed those titles. Those titles were predominantly featured on their programming, on the pay-per-views, on Fox Sports West, or Fox Sports, excuse me. And then in that dark era when Impact went away and the NWA existed before Billy Corgan, you know, Dave Marquez had these guys running in small arenas all throughout the Southwest, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Florida, you know, and various other places. Bill Barron's had annual shows in Michigan and at the Ohio State Fair. It's not. I feel like it's very cheap to diminish those what happened before them. And obviously, right? Obviously, the title it has a lot of prominence right now, but it was featured in New Japan just a few years ago when Rob Conway was world champion. And no, it wasn't the main event of Wrestle Kingdom, but it was on freaking Wrestle Kingdom. So I hate when I hear Billy and Aldis mention how much they've done for the NWA. Like, you inherited a great product. Don't get me wrong. It was in a downshift during the ending years of the Bruce Starp era, but it didn't start off that way. It you know, there's a lot of good stuff there. Okay. Let's see. Jeff says, I think my comment was misinterpreted based on what it was posted. I meant that the rhetoric that both men put out there that the pre-Corgan and all this area didn't do anything for the title of the company. Okay. I mean, I get that. I'm sorry if I get a little bit rushy here because we've only got 15 minutes left. I want to get to the show too. Mayor says, I feel like the title is the best hands right now with Trevor. He's a darker character, slightly different from the first reign. I agree, Mayor. I agree. I think Trevor's the right guy right now. We'll wait and see what Cardona looks like when he's healthy. We'll wait and see who comes next. I mean, look, if they could somehow get Karrion Kross into the NWA, I'd love to see him with a run with the World Heavyweight Championship. But as of right now, I think Trevor is the best guy. With maybe the next best guy to me would be the Pope. Let's see. Poyo says, nobody works for a company owned by someone else and agrees with 100% of the booking decisions. That's just a fact of life. Quote Eli. Eli Drake. Yeah, look, Poyo, look, I'm not asking you to say anything that would get you in hot water or anything. That's just how I feel. And again, this is my podcast, so that's what I do is, you know, we get fired up for power. We talk about power, but I'm also giving you some insight from somebody who's been following the brand for the last, 30 years and have been specifically podcasting and writing about the NWA since 2006. Again, not trying to sound like I'm better than you. Of course, that's not the case. Boy, I respect the hell out of you. What you say, what you write about. I think you have a great mind for the business, and I hope the NWA uses that mind more and more as the coming weeks come down. Chris says, I was there when Douglas threw down the belt. Yeah, that's true. Jeff says, I'd only be okay with Triple H buying the NWA if that means the 10 pounds of gold comes off the damn office wall. Okay, fair enough, Jeff. Poyo says, something to remind viewers of the NWA product who have questions about where certain talents might have disappeared to. The NWA films 90 days of TV during the 3-day cycle. So if someone cannot make it to a set of tapings, they disappear for 3 months. Yeah, man. And that's like, we feel that right now, as it seems, we haven't seen Paro since the Crockett Cup, and now we're kind of getting a singles run out of our boy Odinson, which is all fun. But like the end was a great tag team, and especially when we talk about these United States tag team titles, they certainly would be a good go at those titles. And who knows, maybe Paro will be back at the next set of tapings, and maybe he won't. That's also kind of the benefit that Billy Corgan talks about, having that carousel of talent that comes in and goes. Some of that talent will be here, some of them won't be here, and that's okay. You know, that I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's more akin to the old territory system, and is actually kind of cool. And when you see new faces pop up, you're like, oh shit, who's this? Oh, I haven't seen this person before. Or, oh, I know this guy. He wrestles so and so, and he's from here. I think that's part of the charm of what the NWA does at the moment. Pollo brought up that Steamboat was initially announced for Chase, but he had to change plans, so now we get Barry Windham, Baby Doll, JJ Dillon at the 74 weekend, and Steamboat will be at Nashville. I mean, that's still a great get. Ricky Steamboat is an icon. Certainly should have been, if he's not already, in the NWA Hall of Fame. His feud with Ric Flair was one of the best ones. I remember the Chi-Town matches. I remember the Family Man versus the Party Man. I remember seeing Richie Steamboat come out dressed like his papa. Those were good old days. Mayor says, hold up, what's in the message Nick sent before blocking you? How many curses were involved? Actually, none. He was very respectful in being disrespectful. Pipe says, unpopular opinion, Odinson needs a kayfabe voice. Oh, no. Oh, man, I'm not going to say anything. Pollo says, all these men work to keep the title still viable, and I do think there are parts of the story, but I believe Billy and Nick speak to the resurgence of the modestly mainstream conversation about the NWA. And again, tomato, we can agree to disagree. I just think it's disrespectful when you had Rob Conway, a guy who defended that title in New Japan Pro Wrestling. You had Jack Stane defend those tag titles in New Japan. I mean, he wasn't wrestling. Sure, he was wrestling those smaller shows, but you have to remember they were defending the tag titles in Korakuen Hall. You know what I mean? Like, they were in Tokyo defending the NWA World Tag Team titles. And sure, they didn't win every match. And in fact, they lost the belts. But the forward momentum, the NWA is in a good spot right now, but they're not at this point right now. I would think that New Japan wouldn't even want to work with them. A couple of years ago, that was a different story. Chris doesn't hate the NWA. I've been in the NWA since '93. Just want it better. I think that's true. Poyo says, I don't think anything of that sort. I was speaking to conversations regarding Nick, alluding to Billy's choices. Okay. I'm sorry, Poyo, I didn't follow, but I'll touch base with you later. Natalia Markova is a prime example. Yeah, Natalia, it sucks for her. She's great. Natalia, I can't wait to see her back in action. I feel really bad seeing her not being able to compete due to injury. Hopefully she gets healed up very soon. Cody says they should bring in Bob Orton. He was one of the few wrestlers at the Chase Survivor and literally lives in St. Louis. Yeah, that'd be a good choice. Willie says Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood defend Slaughter and Don Carnolo at Starrcade Night 83 for the World's Tag Team Championship. Yeah. Pipe says, yes, bring Bob Orton. I wonder if his arm is healed yet. It's still in a cast, brother. That's not a work, man. That's a shoot. That arm's about to fall off. And Poyo, okay, cool, Poyo. Again, mutual admiration here. Nothing but love and respect for you. Now let's talk about this card that I've completely ignored for the last 50 minutes. Of course, tonight is an empowered episode of Power. I love the idea that they're going to keep doing empowered episodes, but I kind of wish I'll be one of the first people to admit I wish that the 74th anniversary show was still doing both the EMPOWERRR before and the anniversary show the following night. I get why they're not. It makes total sense. I like the idea of these empowered TV episodes. However, I would shift the focus a little bit, and instead of making an empowered episode, maybe do regular taping schedules, but the next power trip, make those an empowered special. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if you don't want to make it a full-fledged pay-per-view, maybe use like the live premiere live events that we were promised on the streaming service. Maybe make those some of those empowered events, because I think at this point, the show is Power, the show is USA. You can call it Empower, but the minute you put a men's tag team match in it, it just kind of feels not the same. And not that I would love to see the Commonwealth Connection take on the Dirty Sexy Boys, but I just feel like you just killed the whole theme of the night by throwing a World Tag Team title match in with this women's event, this women's evening. But that's just me. So let's talk about the card. Of course, we get the premiere, the debut of Kaci Lennox. And I'm not familiar with Kaci Lennox at all. I got to be honest. I didn't have time to research her this morning, but she is taking on Kenzie Paige. And I will say this, that Kenzie Paige is one of the most improved wrestlers I've seen since her time in the NWA. Every time she goes out there and wrestles in the ring, you're going to see a fighter. and she, like I said, she just keeps improving. I don't think I've seen her have a bad match uh, recent time. I'm very excited to see what's next for her, and hopefully see what's going to happen. Uh, see what's going to happen next for her. Another match that's going to be taking place tonight, of course, is the number one contendership for that Burke. And I think, this is definitely going to set up the 74th anniversary show when you have KiLynn, I always mess that up, KiLynn King taking on Taya Valkyrie. Now, Taya Valkyrie has been essentially your international uh, championship collector. She's got belts from Australia. She's won titles in XPW. She's won titles in Mexico. She's won titles everywhere. Hell, she's even the Impact Tag Team Champion as it currently stands. A feud between Taya Valkyrie and Camille would be off the charts exciting. We did get KiLynn King versus Camille at the Alwayz Ready pay-per-view. I personally am hoping we see Taya versus Camille at the pay-per-view, but I really feel like there's not a bad way to go on this one. And then, of course, the world tag team titles are on the line when Davey Boy Smith Jr. We call him Davey Boy Smith, or we call him Harry? Let's just call him Harry. I prefer Harry. Harry Smith and Doug Williams take on the Dirty Sexy Boys, JTG and Dirty Dango. This should be a very classic tag team match. I don't like the fact that we're seeing Dirty Sexy Boys in a tag team title match without very much build. I mean, I don't even know the last time we saw those guys in an NWA ring. It might have been Crockett Cup. And I feel like one of the biggest disservices the NWA does currently is not give an opportunity for teams to get established before being given these title shots. Now, of course, when the Briscoes were to go out and challenge La Rebellion for the tag titles following Crockett Cup, it made a ton of sense because they just got off winning the Crockett Cup. Or when the Commonwealth Connection got a shot at those titles, because again, that was built up through Crockett Cup. They beat La Rebellion. So it made all the sense in the world. Dirty Sexy Boys haven't beaten anybody in a while. Hell, they haven't been on TV in a while. I feel like even if you would have just given them a few victories leading up to this, it would have made a hell of a lot more sense, and it would have been a lot more pleasing to my pro wrestling ears and eyes. So I think that's where I'm going to go with that. Real quick, I see Poyo's comments. I'll get to those in just a second. Kaci is gorgeous, so talented. It's going to be a great match. I've known Kenzie since she was literally underaged. Careful, Poyo. Taya is the hottest commodity in women's wrestling right now, in my opinion, and she is an NWA for the gold, period. Yeah, Taya is, look, I don't know how the WWE signs a talent like Taya Valkyrie and doesn't figure out how to use her in a correct way. And Taya Valkyrie is no stranger to the NWA. She used to be a part of the ECCW back in the early 2000s, before she joined the Perros Del Mar, and that's when she was a NWA Supergirls champion, which kind of was like I guess their version of the women's championship, long before they were calling it the Burke. And she was certainly on her way to winning that title, or getting an opportunity to wrestle for that title, before heading to Mexico and changing things. And yeah, Poyo, Harry's the better. Yeah, you know what? Harry is what we should be calling him, because he's not Davey Boy Smith. He's Harry. That's what he is. Yeah, and Poyo, look, I can't agree to disagree. There's a way to do this, and I'm sure, I'm not expecting you to say anything disrespectful about the company you work for, but there's ways to work things out. There's ways to get this done. I've frequented TV tapings quite often. I'm in the back quite a bit at Championship Wrestling, and oops, I just lost my camera. And there are ways to make that happen. There are ways to make it work, and the fact that I get that they have to cram in so much in such a little time, I think that's a flawed system to begin with. And if you got companies like Championship Wrestling or Memphis Wrestling or Reality of Wrestling and all these other smaller promotions that don't have, the access to what Billy Corgan has, they can do monthly wrestling tapings. Why can't the NWA? I know the rosters are a lot more expensive too. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But it seems like you would be able to, manifest these things if you wanted to. Okay, so back to the other show, back to the rest of the show, I should say. So yeah, this big tag team main event, and then of course the main event of the evening, Kamille versus Chelsea Green. Sure, we've seen this match a couple of times, but Chelsea Green, let's not underestimate her. She's a fighter. She's benefiting from that Cardona contract, that deal that Matt Cardona made with Billy Corgan, being able to get a title shot. Camille has been all over the planet defending that title. Okay, maybe not outside of the United States, but really everywhere in between the United States. She shows up at XPW rocking the Burke. She shows up at Coastal Championship Wrestling defending the title. She's had matches all across the U.S. She's been in, bingo halls. She's been in television studios. She is the legit real deal. I can't say enough positive things about Camille. She's taking on Chelsea Green, who is double tough. Don't get me wrong. Chelsea Green's a great performer, great wrestler, but I don't think she's got Camille's number tonight. I think Camille will still be your one-time Burke champion at the end of the evening, but I do feel like that is something to talk about. I think that's going to be a great match. I think this is going to be a good night of wrestling. I will say this: if you've been watching these shows, these Power episodes the last few weeks, I really feel like the product has gotten better. It keeps getting better. It's not where it was, which I think is a great thing. I think it continues to get better. There's still some things in the shows that I don't love, but I think all in all, the show itself is getting better. Yeah, Chelsea is such an underrated talent too, who we don't get to see in the ring as often as we should. Yeah, and Chelsea Green, like, look, man, again, another person. How I don't know how the WWE couldn't find something to do with her. And I get it. There were contracts. They were trying to save money. They were cutting. I don't want to say that Vince's hush money had anything to do with this stuff, but I think, they are making record-breaking profit numbers and still cut all that talent. I never understood that. And then Pollo again echoing the sentiment that Camille has absolutely been working her ass off to prove she's a bona fide world champion who is still improving. Yeah, and that's the thing. She hasn't reached her final form yet because she's good in the ring, but please don't take it the wrong way. If you ever hear this, Camille, she's not great. She's really, really good, but she's not great. And I just imagine that, she keeps having these matches. A feud with Taya Valkyrie can really put her in that next level. That steel sharpened steel is not a joke. And she could be so much better, than she already is. And that's almost, it sounds ridiculous to say, because I feel like you could put Camille on just about any roster and you could put her on any roster and I think she's still legit. Pipe Picasso also agrees. Pollo, you also agree. Camille is still green and nowhere near where she can and will be, which I'm 100% convinced she knows. I mean, she's great. And again, she's not there yet. She's still got work to put in, and that just shows you what the NWA has in her. And who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, we're talking about her in the same ring with Thunder Rosa again and AEW, or maybe her in the same ring with Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch, because she's just that damn good. John Megan says she's great in big time matches. Yeah, I mean, those matches she had with Thunder Rosa, and Thunder Rosa didn't give her a whole lot in those matches. She didn't, but she still looked pretty good. Dodie says the wrestling has become better, even better than pre-pandemic era. For storyline, they need to do better unless they repeatedly into super indie route of great wrestling story doesn't matter. No, I think they're trying to find that balance, and I still think it takes time. Hopefully with more people like Pollo involved, and I do 100% mean that, Pollo, allowing your creativity to kind of help direct maybe future storylines, I think would be a great way to make the show better. I'm not saying that Billy does everything wrong, because there's a lot of things that Billy has done that I'm 100% on board with and think have been great. Hell, this Jax Dane run has been absolute money. Jax Dane as national champion has been 100% probably my favorite thing the NWA is doing right now. But I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement. in a couple different ways. Cody says, like I said before, it will keep saying this. Camille can be champion as long as they want, but we want more of her in Power in USA. 100%. And then Poyo says, what makes Camille special in the drive to be better? Too many people get to the top and get content. 100% with that, too. And Poyo also brings up, in fact, I have, sorry, Poyo. That's a shame. It really is. Hopefully they'll hear you a little bit more. That would be great, Jeff. I do appreciate that. I'd love to see it. All right, well, that's going to do it, guys, because, again, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, and it's time for the Empower Hour. And I hope you guys all check it out. Jump in the chat, do that group chat, and give yourselves high fives, and let's marvel at what the NWA can do and what they do well. And I guess that's going to do it for us, guys. Poyo, thanks for checking us out. Everyone else also thanks for checking us out. Poyo, you're welcome to jump in here anytime. If you ever want to jump on, just hit up those DMs. You're more than welcome to be a part of this show. But we're going to wrap it up here. Make sure you come back tomorrow, Wednesday, 6 p.m. for the other Alliance guys. And then on Thursday, the original, we'll see you at 8 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, we'll see you at the matches. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.